Nothing more than a nobody. Charlotte, who was engaged to my son, spoke these words with contempt as she glared at me from her seat at the dinner table, and her laughter felt like a sharp blade slicing through the air. The entire room went completely still. Amelia, Charlotte's mother, displayed a pleased smirk. There I remained, my hand clenched around my fork, while anger bubbled just below my composed facade. These women assumed they understood who I was, some old, insignificant man called Robert Mason. Their assumption was completely incorrect. Before long, they would learn the truth. The moment her mother decides to search my name online, their entire world will fall apart. Before we move forward, please remember to subscribe to the channel and share in the comments where you are tuning in from. Those words struck me like a physical blow. Nothing more than a nobody. Charlotte's cutting voice pierced through the dinner conversation, and her laughter was both harsh and vicious. The entire room became motionless. My fork remained suspended above my dinner plate, with mashed potatoes still attached to its prongs. On the opposite side of our polished oak dining table, Charlotte reclined in her seat, her perfectly groomed fingernails catching the light from the chandelier above. Amelia, her mother, wore a satisfied grin, her mouth curved as though she had just tasted something delightful. David, my son, kept his eyes fixed on his own plate, his shoulders slumped forward, remaining completely quiet. I remained seated there as Robert Mason, 64 years of age, sensing the burden of their gazes upon me. Fury continued to simmer underneath my composed exterior, like a gradual fire burning within my chest. My knuckles grew white as I gripped the fork more tightly, yet I refused to show any reaction, not at that moment. Our dining room, filled with its crystal drinking glasses and dancing candle flames, had felt welcoming just moments before. At this moment, it seemed like a performance space, and I had become the ridiculous character caught in the bright lights. Charlotte angled her head slightly, allowing her golden curls to capture the illumination. "How does it feel, Robert, spending time in that small home of yours, dwelling on your past moments of importance?" Her voice was saturated with ridicule, each syllable acting like a sharp point. "David shared with me that you used to put on those dated suits for your job. What exactly did you do for work? Were you some sort of office worker?" Amelia released a small laugh while she tapped her wine glass using a polished fingernail. "Oh, Charlotte, please show some compassion. Not everyone is able to stay up to date with modern times. Some individuals simply fade into the background." Her gaze moved to me, icy and judgmental, as if I were a piece of old furniture she had chosen to get rid of. David moved restlessly in his chair, his fork making scraping sounds against his plate. He refused to lift his eyes. My chest felt constricted. I had the urge to stretch across the table, grasp his shoulder, and force him to acknowledge me, but his silence wounded me more deeply than Charlotte's cruel comments. My own child was allowing this treatment to continue. I placed my fork down, and the sound it made was loud in the silence. Every pair of eyes focused on me. Charlotte's expression showed victory. Amelia's face displayed smugness. David's gaze remained turned away. The candles created elongated shadows that moved across the tablecloth, resembling spirits from the life I had constructed. These women believed they understood who I was. Old, unimportant Robert Mason, a leftover to be pitied. Their belief was wrong. "Charlotte," I spoke, keeping my voice quiet and controlled, "do you believe you understand who I am?" I moved forward slightly, just enough to meet her eyes. Her confident expression wavered for just an instant. "However, you do not." The room seemed to hold its breath. Amelia lifted one eyebrow, but I did not turn to look at her. My attention remained fixed on Charlotte, on that brief moment of doubt I saw in her green eyes. I moved my chair backward, the legs making scraping noises on the wooden floor. "Please excuse me," I said as I stood up. My hands remained calm, but my heart was beating rapidly, like drums of war. I left the dining room, with their quiet conversations following me like wisps of smoke. The corridor was dimly lit, and the air felt cooler. My footsteps became slower as I walked past the family photograph mounted on the wall. The picture showed me, Catherine, and David, all smiling in a time that no longer existed. Catherine's eyes appeared to track my movement, her loving presence like a spirit within the frame. I paused, my fingertips lightly touching the glass surface. Charlotte's mocking laughter continued to ring in my thoughts, sharp and cruel. They would discover the truth before long. When Amelia decided to search for my name online, their reality would collapse. However, first I had to remember my true identity. I moved toward my study and the door made a creaking sound as I opened it. The evening was only starting. Behind me, the study door made a clicking sound as it closed, which dampened the far-off sounds of plates being cleared from the dining room. I stood in the silence, breathing air that was thick with the smell of aged books and polished wooden furniture. In one corner sat my desk, a solid oak piece that remained from a life that seemed to belong to someone else entirely. Resting on top of it was our family photograph, showing Catherine's smile captured forever in time, along with David's tiny hand held in mine. I walked across the room, my footsteps quiet on the soft carpet, and lifted the picture frame. My thumb moved along its edge, feeling the cool glass beneath my fingertip. The recollection struck me with sudden force. The year was 1998, and I was 38 years old, walking confidently through the glass entrance doors of an investment banking firm in Boston's downtown area. The workplace was alive with activity, telephone calls, rustling documents, and the energy of ambitious people pursuing success. My workspace was covered with reports, and a coffee cup was balanced precariously on the corner. William, who was my supervisor, stood casually against the doorway with his necktie loosened. "Robert, you are being considered for vice president," he announced, throwing a folder onto my workspace. "Major clients, executive office space. Are you interested?" I had desperately wanted that opportunity. Dear God, how much I had wanted it. However, Catherine's coughing had become worse during that week, and her complexion looked pale against the white hospital bed linens. I could picture her in my memory, her hands gripping mine tightly, her voice gentle and reassuring. "We will manage fine, Robert." I turned to William, feeling my throat become tight with emotion. "I must be at home," I told him. He looked surprised, then gave a nod, and I could see disappointment pass through his expression. I walked away, leaving that folder completely unopened. The memory changed scenes. Now it was 2005, and I was sitting in our small, messy kitchen with the refrigerator, making humming sounds in the corner. David had reached 15 years old, all awkward height and silent defiance. I sat at our kitchen table, writing out a check to pay for his private school education, my fingers aching from working extra hours at a position that paid only half of what I had previously earned. My pen made scratching sounds against the paper. Every single zero represented a commitment I was making. David walked through quickly, snatching an apple from the counter. "Thanks, Dad," he said quietly, already moving toward the exit. He failed to notice the pile of unpaid bills stacked next to me. He had no idea I had rejected a higher-paying position just to remain nearby. Another memory flashed before me. The year was 2013, and it was David's college graduation ceremony. The large auditorium was filled with families, beaming with pride. I found myself sitting by myself in the rear section, wearing a suit that was too large for me, with my hands resting in my lap. Up on the platform, David held his diploma tightly, his face lit up with joy. "I would like to express gratitude to my friends," he spoke into the microphone, his words bouncing off the walls. "You helped me reach this point." The audience responded with applause. I sat there waiting, feeling tightness in my chest, but he never mentioned my name. I joined in the clapping too, though my hands felt weighted down, and my smile was nothing more than a disguise. Back in my study, I placed the photograph back down, my breathing becoming irregular. I had sacrificed everything, my professional life, my aspirations, my dignity, all for their sake. Now Charlotte's cruel words continued to ring in my mind. "You are nothing but a nobody." David's refusal to speak wounded me even more deeply. I had transformed into something invisible, like a ghost living my own existence. I lowered myself into the chair, hearing the leather make creaking sounds beneath my weight. My gaze landed on the desk drawer, which was partially open, revealing just a corner of my old contact book sticking out. I extracted it carefully, noticing how the leather exterior had become soft from wear and the pages had turned yellow with age. It carried the scent of years gone by, of successful business deals and honored commitments. Within this book were names of people who had once regarded me as a powerful figure, someone capable of achieving the impossible. I had not looked at it for many years. My fingertips moved across the various names. Each entry was like a connection to a history I had chosen to leave behind. Was I no longer that person, or could I still be? Charlotte and Amelia believed they could destroy me using their harsh words, but they had no understanding of the burdens I had shouldered, the inner strength required to abandon success for the sake of love. I turned one page, then moved to the next, feeling my heartbeat accelerate. There it was, Thomas Anderson, a name that had the potential to transform everything. I paused, pressing my thumb against the paper. A genuine smile began to form on my face, small but authentic. The anger from our dinner remained within me, but now it had direction and purpose. I shut the book, the sound echoing sharply in the stillness. Rising from my seat, I tucked it into my jacket pocket and walked toward the exit. The telephone was located in the living room, and I had an important call to place. The living room was poorly lit, with only the floor lamp providing gentle illumination across our worn sofa. I positioned myself beside the coffee table, feeling the weight of the address book in my palm, its leather surface warm from my touch. The telephone rested on the side table, a black wireless device that had remained silent for weeks. My thumb hesitated above the number pad. Thomas Anderson's contact information was etched into my memory. Charlotte's contemptuous expression replayed in my thoughts. You are nothing but a nobody. My jaw muscles tensed. I was no longer that person, not any longer. I began dialing. Each electronic tone sounded loud in the silence. My heart pounded with a combination of anxiety and determination. What if Thomas had forgotten about me? What if he remembered but found it amusing? The connection went through and a rough voice responded. This is Sullivan. Thomas, I said, keeping my voice more controlled than I actually felt. This is Robert Mason. There was a moment of silence, followed by a quiet laugh. Robert Mason. Well, I'll be damned. It has been quite some time, has it not? Far too long, I replied. I managed a smile even though he could not see it. I need to meet with you face to face. Are you available tomorrow? Another pause, this one lasting longer. What is this regarding, Robert? His tone changed, becoming inquisitive, as if he could sense the significance behind my request. Let us just say I am asking for an old favor to be returned. I looked down at the address book, open to his contact information. Are you still at the country club? Yes, would noon be suitable? His voice now carried an intensity, as though he understood this was not simply a social visit. Noon works perfectly. I kept the conversation brief, my grip tightening on the phone. I will see you then. Looking forward to it, Robert. The line disconnected. I placed the phone back down, breathing slowly and purposefully. The room seemed to shrink around me, the atmosphere becoming electric. I walked over to the window, where the curtains were partially closed, and gazed out at the street. The neighborhood remained peaceful, with well-maintained lawns and houses that glowed with the lives of people I would never meet. My own reflection looked back at me, eyes focused and sharp in the glass. For the first time in many years, I could recognize who I truly was. A recollection came to mind. The year was 1996. An elegant Boston restaurant with dark wooden interiors and the gentle sound of clinking glassware. I was 36 years old, dressed in a perfectly pressed suit, offering a confident handshake. Across from me at the table, a client moved closer, holding his pen ready above a contract. You negotiate aggressively, Robert, he said, though his smile showed respect. I had successfully completed the deal within 15 minutes, with the restaurant staff acknowledging me respectfully as I walked by. That version of myself, self-assured and unstoppable, felt within reach again, his energy flowing through my body. I stepped away from the window, still holding the address book. Charlotte and Amelia thought they had defeated me, but they had actually awakened something within me instead. David's silence caused me pain, but I would demonstrate to him who his father truly was. I refused to let him fall victim to their toxic influence. I slid the book into my pocket, feeling its weight like a key to a door I had sealed long ago. Tomorrow, Thomas would unlock that door, and I would step through it. I was uncertain what information he might share about Amelia's hidden truths, Charlotte's manipulative behavior, or something completely different, but it represented a beginning. I took my coat from the hanging rack, feeling the familiar softness of the fabric. The cool night air would help clear my thoughts. I walked outside, securing the door behind me. The stars shone brightly above, standing out clearly against the darkness, as if they were keeping watch. I got into my vehicle, listening to the engine come alive. Thomas was expecting me, and I was prepared. The stars continued to shine brilliantly overhead as I drove into the golf club parking area, their illumination offering a subtle promise in the evening twilight. I turned off the engine, keeping my hand on the keys for a moment longer. The contact book sat inside my jacket pocket, its presence reminding me of who I once was. I got out of the car, hearing the gravel make crunching sounds beneath my feet, and straightened my necktie. The club's entrance doors, made of glass, sparkled in front of me, showing reflections of the perfectly maintained golf course and the wealthy members who moved gracefully across it. This place belonged to their social circle, Amelia's and Charlotte's world. However, today I was entering their territory. Once inside, the atmosphere carried the scent of buffed wood and costly cigars. The bar area was positioned in one corner, with its marble surface reflecting the sunlight streaming through the windows. Thomas Anderson occupied a tall table, his thinning gray hair visible, but his eyes remained as keen as I recalled. He lifted his bourbon glass in acknowledgement, wearing a crooked smile. "Robert Mason," he said as I came closer, his voice having that familiar rough quality. "Never expected to see you in this place again." I took the seat opposite him, my fingers lightly touching the address book through my jacket fabric. "Things have a way of changing," I replied, maintaining a casual tone. The person working behind the bar was cleaning a glass not far away, clearly listening. I moved in closer to Thomas. "I need you to assist me, Thomas." He stirred his beverage, making the ice cubes clink together. I had a feeling that was the case. "What has brought you out of your quiet life?" His gaze examined me carefully, evaluating me the same way he used to back in the late 90s, when we would finalize business deals over expensive steak dinners. I spoke more quietly. "Amelia Wilson, Charlotte as well. They have become involved with my son." The words left a bad taste in my mouth. Charlotte's contemptuous look and her words, "You are nothing but a nobody," replayed in my thoughts, making my jaw muscles tense. Thomas raised one eyebrow but allowed me to continue without interruption. I kept talking. "They believe they can treat me with disrespect. I need to understand what kind of people I am dealing with." He reclined in his seat, looking around the bar area. A pair of golfers dressed in white clothing were laughing at the counter, completely unaware of our conversation. Thomas's voice became quieter. "Amelia is living beyond her means, Robert. That large house of hers has a second mortgage, completely maxed out. She has been avoiding people she owes money to for several months." He took a sip of his bourbon, keeping his eyes fixed on mine. "Regarding Charlotte, she is actively searching for financial security. Your son's inheritance is her path to a comfortable lifestyle." My heartbeat increased, but I maintained a composed expression. Amelia's satisfied smile from the dinner table came back to my memory, along with her polished fingernails tapping against her wineglass. She was financially ruined, desperate, and Charlotte was attached to David like a scavenger bird. I experienced a surge of emotion. Anger, certainly, but also mental clarity. They were not beyond reach. "How serious is her situation?" I inquired quietly. "Amelia's financial problems." Thomas let out a laugh, though it contained no amusement. "Serious enough that a single error could destroy her completely. She is counting on Charlotte's wedding to rescue her from her troubles." He stopped speaking, his fingers tapping rhythmically on the table surface. "Are you certain you want to engage in this type of conflict, Robert? These are not the same times as before." I looked directly at him, my hand moving into my pocket to feel the address book. "I am certain." He examined me carefully, then gave a nod of agreement. "Very well, but you never heard any of this information from me?" He pushed a business card across the table, its edge catching the sunlight. "Contact this person. He has comprehensive information, bank statements, everything. He operates discreetly." I picked up the card, feeling its smooth surface beneath my thumb. This could be the key to exposing their false appearances. I removed my pen and wrote a quick note inside the address book. The sound of ink scratching seemed loud to my ears. The light coming through the bar's windows reflected off the glass table, bright and focused like my thoughts had become. I was no longer simply responding to their actions. I was taking initiative. "Thank you, Thomas," I said while putting the card away. "I am in your debt." He gestured dismissively with his hand, his smile appearing tired. "Just be careful not to get in over your head." He finished his drink and stood up, patting my shoulder. "It was good to see you again, Robert." I observed him leaving, watching his figure disappear into the crowd of well-dressed people and the sound of clinking glasses. My chest felt less heavy, but my mind was working rapidly. Amelia's financial troubles and Charlotte's greed were pieces of a puzzle I could utilize. However, would David be able to see through their deception, or would he distance himself from me? That thought caused pain, but I forced it aside. I needed to take things one step at a time. I stood up, feeling the steady weight of the address book against my chest. Outside, the air had become cool, and the stars were disappearing into the afternoon haze. I got into my car, holding the business card in my hand. Its edges were sharp and clean, offering the promise of answers. I flipped it over, my eyes focusing intently. The competition had begun, and I was prepared to participate. My study was peaceful, with the desk lamp creating a warm circle of light across my laptop computer. The business card Thomas had given me rested next to it, its corner appearing sharp, like a key to the door I was preparing to open. I leaned back in my chair, hearing the leather make creaking sounds, and looked at the computer screen. The cursor was blinking in a blank document, waiting for me to begin. Charlotte's voice replayed in my thoughts. "You are nothing but a nobody." A gradual smile formed on my face. "Not this evening." I began to type, with the keys making soft clicking sounds. I was creating a formal invitation to a charity auction addressed to Amelia Wilson. The words came naturally to me. Distinguished guest, the honor of your attendance, featured speaker. I selected each word with care, constructing a trap she would be unable to resist. Amelia, with her inflated sense of self-importance, would jump at the opportunity to be the center of attention among Boston's wealthy elite. However, I was aware of what Thomas had revealed to me. Her bank accounts were empty, her impressive appearance was as fragile as a house made of cards. One public commitment, one missed payment, and the rumors would begin circulating. My fingers stopped moving, suspended above the keyboard. I imagined Amelia opening the envelope, her eyes becoming bright when she saw the embossed letterhead I had created. She would probably call Charlotte immediately to boast about it. "This is my big moment," she would declare, her voice filled with self-satisfaction. However, the image of David with his head hanging down troubled me deeply. What if he came to despise me because of this action? I forced that concern aside, concentrating instead on watching Amelia's world fall apart. I moved closer to the side exits, feeling the cool wood beneath my hand. Part of me desired to remain, to savor every moment of her public shame. But I had witnessed enough. The gossip would circulate, her standing in society would deteriorate like poor quality fabric. Charlotte's state of panic was an additional benefit, as her sense of control was diminishing. This represented only the initial wound. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I retrieved it, seeing the screen illuminate with a message from Linda, who had been Catherine's close friend. "Robert, we must speak. Are you able to meet tomorrow?" My thumb paused above the response button. Linda was intelligent, dependable, and always well-informed. What information might she have for me? I quickly typed an affirmative response suggesting noon, then put the phone away. I opened the door, feeling the cool night air against my skin. The city continued its activity in the distance, its lights appearing bright and merciless. I walked toward my vehicle, with Linda's message repeating in my thoughts. Amelia's public failure was merely the beginning, and Linda's communication seemed like another element fitting into position. The cafe door made a chiming sound as I entered, with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee surrounding me like a comforting embrace. My phone remained in my hand, displaying Linda's message on the screen. "Meet me at Maples, 10 in the morning." I placed it in my pocket while searching the establishment with my eyes. I spotted her near the window, her reddish-brown hair reflecting the morning sunlight. Linda gestured to me, her smile appearing gentle yet knowing, as if she had been anticipating this meeting for as long as I had. My chest felt constricted with emotions. Hope, memories of the past, and a glimpse of earlier times. I walked across the wooden flooring, the sound of my footsteps mixing with the quiet conversations around us. The cafe had a comfortable atmosphere, featuring wooden tables and unmatching coffee cups, with sunlight flowing through large windows. I took the seat facing Linda, finding comfort in the warmth of the ceramic mug she had requested for me. "You appear well, Robert," she said, her voice soft and careful, as though she was gauging the situation. "Thank you," I replied, wrapping my fingers around the warm mug. "It has been quite some time." Catherine's laughter appeared in my memory, along with her hand resting on Linda's shoulder during those summer gatherings from years past. I suppressed that recollection, focusing on Linda's unwavering look. She moved forward, placing her arms on the table. "I learned about the dinner," she said, her tone becoming more intense and focused. "Charlotte's cruel behavior, calling you insignificant in your own house." Her mouth formed a tight line, and I could see the anger in her expression, the same fierce spirit Catherine possessed when someone wronged her. I gave a nod, my jaw muscles tensing. She and Amelia believe they understand who I am. They are mistaken. Linda's smile came back, small but determined. "Excellent, because I have information you will find interesting." She looked around carefully, lowering her voice. "Charlotte is not only pursuing David's inheritance. She has become involved with a man, some criminal who has been cheating people for years. They are scheming to use your son's trust fund to finance their fraudulent operation." My breathing stopped momentarily. The mug suddenly felt heavy in my grasp. Charlotte's contemptuous expression from the dinner returned to my mind, along with her cold, scheming green eyes. I had suspected she was motivated by greed, but this revelation showed she was a fraudster being manipulated by someone else. My heartbeat increased, with anger combining with an odd sense of relief. This information could be used as leverage, genuine leverage. "How are you aware of this?" I inquired, maintaining a quiet voice. Linda's gaze moved to the window, then returned to me. "I maintain connections with people who share information, individuals who observe situations." She paused, her fingers tapping on the table surface. "Catherine always mentioned that you were intelligent, Robert. She said you could outwit anyone. So, what is your plan of action?" I leaned backward, hearing the chair make creaking sounds. The cafe's comfortable warmth now seemed distant, as my mind worked rapidly. Charlotte's fraudulent scheme could destroy David financially, but if I handled this situation correctly, it could destroy her instead. "We will create a trap," I said, the plan forming as I spoke the words. "Something she will be unable to resist, a false business opportunity. Perhaps we can force her to reveal her true intentions." Linda's eyes became bright with interest. "I approve of that idea. I can act as an intermediary. I will create a story about a wealthy investor. She is driven by greed, so she will take the bait." She reached into her handbag and removed a worn photograph, sliding it across the table toward me. The image showed Catherine and Linda laughing on a beach, with their hair blown by the wind. "For good fortune," she said quietly, "and because she would support us in doing this." I touched the photograph, feeling my throat become tight with emotion. Catherine's smile served as a source of strength, reminding me of the reason I was engaged in this fight. "She would indeed," I said, my voice becoming rough. I placed the photo in my pocket alongside the address book. "Who do we need to involve to accomplish this?" Linda's smile became cunning. "I have a contact in mind. Actually, it is someone from your past." She handed me a napkin with her neat, precise handwriting on it. I looked at it briefly, keeping it positioned away from other customers. There was a name written there, but I did not speak it aloud. "Not in this location." "Perfect," I said, folding the napkin and storing it safely. The plan was developing into a web I would construct around Charlotte. However, David's face and his silence during the dinner continued to trouble me. What if he failed to recognize the truth? What if he selected her over me? I pushed that fear aside, concentrating on Linda's steady gaze. We stood up, causing the table to shake slightly as we moved our chairs back. Outside, the spring air felt fresh and clean, with the street filled with people shopping during the midday hours. As we walked onto the sidewalk, something fell from my pocket. It was a business card that had yellowed with age floating down to the pavement. I bent down to retrieve it, my fingers touching the familiar name written on it. A gradual smile formed across my face. This represented the solution I required. I positioned myself in my study, holding the aged business card between my fingers, its corners showing wear, but the name remaining legible. My phone made a buzzing sound on the desk, with Linda's message illuminating the screen. At the office, she has arrived. My heartbeat quickened, creating a consistent rhythm in my chest. Charlotte was entering the snare, and I was positioned far away, directing the entire operation. The contact book rested open next to me, serving as a reminder of the person who used to finalize agreements with a simple handshake. That individual had returned. I reclined in my chair, hearing it creak, and visualized the scenario Linda had outlined. An elegant Boston office space, featuring glass walls and polished metal surfaces, the type of environment where Charlotte would feel comfortable. Linda, pretending to be an investor's aide, would present her with an opportunity that seemed too valuable to decline. A high-risk business venture requiring well-connected associates. Charlotte, driven by greed and lacking awareness, would accept the offer. My phone buzzed once more. She is speaking, currently recording. I released my breath, my fingers gripping the card more tightly. Linda was skilled, exceptionally skilled. She would manipulate Charlotte expertly, and every statement would be captured on audio. I rose and began walking around the study, feeling the soft carpet beneath my feet. The atmosphere carried scents of furniture polish and the passage of time, while the family photograph on my desk observed me. Catherine's eyes appeared to encourage me to continue. I envisioned Charlotte in that office setting. Her blonde curls would be perfectly styled, her smile radiating false charm. "I know exactly the right person," she would declare, casually mentioning her fraudulent partner's name as though it were a professional reference. She would not suspect Linda's concealed recording device and would not notice the trap closing around her. This thought excited me, but it was accompanied by concern. If I provided David with this recording, would he accept it as truth? Or would he remain loyal to Charlotte, excluding me permanently from his life? My movement became slower, my hand touching the address book. Catherine had always had faith in me. I needed to have the same confidence in David. Another notification arrived. Mission accomplished. She identified him as Marcus Reed, transmitting the file to you. My heart jumped with excitement. Marcus Reed, a name I could utilize, a connection to investigate further. I opened my laptop computer, its screen providing light in the darkened room. The file was delivered, a small audio recording that contained evidence of Charlotte's betrayal. I chose not to listen to it immediately. Instead, I retrieved a plain envelope from the drawer and placed a USB storage device inside it. There was no accompanying message or identification. David would receive it without knowing the sender, delivered to his workplace the following day. I closed the envelope, my hand remaining steady while my thoughts raced rapidly. Charlotte's recorded voice and her act of betrayal would impact David with tremendous force. However, what would happen afterward? Would he challenge her directly, or would he choose to ignore it? I dismissed those doubts, concentrating on the current objective. The USB device felt like a key that would unlock the truth I had been pursuing. I placed the business card in the drawer, its purpose fulfilled for the moment. The address book remained on my desk, serving as a silent accomplice in this strategy. I retrieved my coat, with the envelope secured inside. The mailbox was a short distance by car, and I wanted to complete this task before I changed my mind. The corridor was silent as I walked past the family photograph. Catherine's smile provided me with stability and strength. I opened the front entrance, feeling the cool evening air on my face, and stepped outside. Vehicle headlights appeared down the street, and I stopped moving. Amelia's automobile, easily recognizable with its shining chrome details, was positioned outside David's residence, 2 blocks from my location. My hold on the envelope became firmer. What was her purpose for being there? Was she attempting to recover, trying to repair her deteriorating situation? Seeing her car motivated me, sparking a renewed sense of determination. Charlotte was becoming unstable, and Amelia would be next in line. I entered my vehicle, listening to the engine start up. The envelope pressed against my chest like a commitment I intended to fulfill. However, Amelia's presence served as a cautionary sign. Time was becoming limited, and this competition was nowhere near finished. Amelia's automobile reflected the street lamp's light, its chrome bumper creating a sharp contrast against the peaceful atmosphere of David's residential neighborhood. I remained hidden in the shadows, breathing quietly, with the envelope containing the USB still in my coat pocket. From within David's house, loud voices could be heard. Amelia's voice was sharp and desperate, cutting through the evening silence. My strategy had affected her severely, and she was struggling frantically. I moved closer, feeling the wet grass beneath my shoes and positioned myself against the hedge. The words became clear now, and they concerned me. Inside Amelia's house just hours before, the situation had been complete disorder. I could picture it clearly, reconstructing the events from the rumors I had initiated. She had opened a letter with official-looking letterhead. The content was devastating. Her financial obligations and missed payments were exposed in a local society gossip publication for all of Boston's wealthy elite to read. Her hands would have trembled, the document becoming wrinkled as she yelled into her telephone, blaming everyone, her financial advisor, her attorney, even Charlotte. However, the reality was now public knowledge. This was a wound I had created through several strategic phone calls and information leaked to the appropriate individuals. Her carefully constructed image was falling apart. Currently in David's living room, she was attacking everyone around her. "This is your father's doing," she yelled, her voice having a harsh quality. "He is responsible for this, David. He is attempting to destroy me." I looked through the window with the curtains partially open. Amelia stood in the room's center, her silk shirt wrinkled and her hair falling loose from its neat arrangement. David sat on the sofa, his expression tense, while Charlotte remained near the entrance, her arms folded across her chest. I held my breath, my heart beating rapidly. Amelia's accusation was a desperate attempt, but it posed a threat. If David accepted her version of events, if he decided to oppose me, my entire plan could collapse. However, I observed his eyes becoming narrow with uncertainty. He was not accepting her story, at least not yet. "Amelia, please calm yourself," David said, his voice quiet but resolute. "You cannot be certain it was him." "Cannot I?" she responded sharply, moving back and forth like a trapped wild animal. "He holds resentment, David. He envies Charlotte and our success. He is insignificant and cannot tolerate what we have achieved." Her statements mirrored Charlotte's words from that dinner, and my jaw muscles tightened. Nobody. That term served as their weapon, but it was becoming less effective. I adjusted my position, my hand touching the contact book in my pocket. I had arranged this situation, providing the media with just enough information to reveal Amelia's deceptions without creating any evidence pointing back to me. The information leak was executed cleanly and could not be traced, but her state of panic proved it had been successful. She was losing control, her social position slipping away from her like grains of sand. Charlotte moved forward, her voice becoming cold. "If Robert is responsible, he is more intelligent than I gave him credit for." Her eyes moved to David, evaluating his reaction. "However, you would be aware of this, would you not? He is your father." David's head jerked upward, his hands forming fists. "Stop this, Charlotte." The strain in his voice sent a cold sensation through me. He was positioned between them, but his uncertainty regarding Amelia was a weakness I could exploit further. Amelia turned toward me, though she remained unaware of my presence. "He is a spiteful elderly man," she said with venom. "You will discover this, David. He will bring you down along with him." Her voice cracked, and I could see it clearly. She felt fear, not only of me, but of losing everything. Her status, her influence, her daughter's prospects. She was suffering severely, and I had barely taken any action. I stepped backward, my footsteps making no sound on the grass. I had heard sufficient information. Amelia's attempt to fight back was born of desperation, but it was unsuccessful. David's silence and his doubt represented my triumph. I turned toward the street, still carrying the envelope in my pocket. The USB would reach him soon, and Charlotte would be the next to fall. However, Amelia's words remained with me as a warning. She had not finished her battle. I drove to my home as night approached and parked in my driveway. The house appeared dark, and the atmosphere felt oppressive. As I entered, my study felt like a place of refuge, with the desk lamp providing gentle illumination. Acting on impulse, I opened a storage closet and located it. Catherine's former laptop, its surface showing wear but still familiar to me. I placed it on the desk, my fingers moving across the keys she had once used. Something suggested to me that it contained answers, fragments of the past I would need for the upcoming conflict. I turned it on, watching the screen come to life. The study remained quiet, with the light from Catherine's old laptop creating shadows on the walls. Its gentle humming filled the silence, serving as a subtle reminder of her presence. I sat at the desk, my fingers positioned above the keyboard, with the address book open next to me. The screen displayed a folder labeled Family, her documents and memories. My chest felt constricted, but before I could access it, my phone vibrated. Linda's name appeared on the display. I answered, keeping my voice low. "What is the situation?" "Amelia is having a breakdown," Linda said, her tone filled with excitement. "She is at her house, searching through your history. She is researching you online as if her existence depends on it." There was a pause, followed by quiet laughter. "She is about to discover your true identity." I leaned back in my chair, a gradual smile forming on my face. The scene was clear in my mind. Amelia, her perfectly manicured nails tapping frantically on her keyboard, her eyes widening as she uncovered the reality. I could almost visualize her sitting in her luxurious office, with the chandelier above her dim by her panic. My history, decades working at the investment bank, business deals that influenced Boston's skyline, sacrifices made for Catherine and David, was not hidden from those who investigated. However, Amelia and Charlotte had not bothered to look. They had only seen a weary old man, someone insignificant. Now the truth would strike them like a massive wave. I imagined her computer screen, displaying articles about my early professional life, my name highlighted next to multi-million-dollar contracts, a feature story in a local newspaper praising my charitable work after I had withdrawn from public attention, a photograph of me at a formal event with Catherine beside me, her smile outshining the camera flashes. Amelia's world, constructed on social status and falsehoods, would collapse as she realized her error. "Thank you, Linda," I said, my voice remaining steady. "Inform me of her reaction." I ended the call, my attention returning to the laptop. I clicked on the family folder, revealing photographs and letters, but my thoughts remained focused on Amelia. I could see her now, her face losing color as she scrolled through the information, her coffee cup abandoned and spilling onto her desk. She had considered me unimportant, a person to ridicule. Now she would see the man who had outsmarted her. Several hours later, I found myself standing in David's living room, with the atmosphere heavy with tension. The family photograph from my house seemed to have an echo in the one displayed on his mantelpiece. A picture of us from years ago, all smiling. Amelia and Charlotte stood before me, their faces showing strain. David remained near the couch, his eyes moving between us, carrying a new sense of gravity in his expression. Perhaps respect. I held the photograph of Catherine that Linda had given me, its edges soft in my hand, drawing strength from her memory. Amelia stepped forward, her voice shaking. "Robert, we were unaware," she said, her usual composure completely gone. "Your professional achievements, your life. We made incorrect judgments about you. I apologize." Her eyes pleaded with me, but they appeared empty, desperately trying to regain control she had lost. Charlotte nodded in agreement, her hands nervously twisting a bracelet. "I was mistaken, Robert," she said, her voice small and forced. "I did not intend to cause you pain. Is it possible for us to begin again?" I looked at both of them, their words seeming as fragile as paper. Charlotte's sneer from the dinner table, "You are nothing but a nobody," continued to echo in my thoughts. Amelia's satisfied smirk and her heartless rejection remained burned into my memory. They felt no genuine remorse. They were frightened, trapped by their own mistakes and failures. I held the photograph more tightly, using Catherine's smile as protection. You perceived only what you chose to perceive, I said, my voice becoming cold and slicing through their desperate pleas. You ridiculed me and caused me humiliation in my own house. Simple apologies cannot undo that damage. Amelia recoiled as if struck, her mouth opening, but she found no words to speak. Charlotte's eyes moved quickly to David, looking for him to rescue her, but he remained quiet, his jaw muscles tensed. I could see it then, a change occurring within him, a growing awareness dawning. He was truly observing me, genuinely seeing me for the first time in many years. My heart felt pain, but I remained resolute, with the address book in my pocket, serving as a silent supporter. Robert, please, Amelia attempted once more, her voice breaking. We can correct this situation. I shook my head, moving toward the exit. The opportunity for that has passed. My gaze met David's, and for a brief moment, we maintained eye contact. There was suffering visible, but also something fresh, comprehension. I turned, placing my hand on the door handle, and departed. Linda was standing beside my car, her arms folded, wearing a gentle but knowing smile. The evening air felt cool, with the street lamps making soft buzzing sounds. You accomplished it, Robert, she said, her voice filled with warmth. They are finished. What happens now? I paused, still holding the photograph, feeling Catherine's presence provide me stability. Now, I said, we discuss what comes next. Linda nodded, indicating her vehicle. I followed her, my steps feeling lighter, with the night spreading before us like a new beginning. The park remained peaceful, with morning sunlight filtering through emerging tree buds, creating spotted patterns of light on the walkway. I sat on a bench next to Linda, holding a paper coffee cup that warmed my hands. The air carried the scent of fresh grass and springtime, representing a world coming to life. Linda's presence felt steady, her shoulder touching mine as we conversed, her voice serving as a gentle anchor following the recent turmoil. She had been waiting by my car the previous evening, her suggestion to talk bringing me to this moment of tranquility after the chaos. Charlotte has departed, Linda said, taking a sip of her coffee. She ended the engagement this morning. She gathered her belongings and left David's residence. Her eyes met mine, showing a glimmer of victory. And Amelia has become like a ghost now. The country clubs have excluded her, and her supposed friends refuse to return her phone calls. I nodded, feeling the significance of it all settling in. Amelia's empire, constructed on borrowed funds and limited time, had fallen apart. Charlotte's fraudulent plans and her criminal associate, once exposed, had disintegrated under the truth I had delivered to David on that USB device. I had achieved victory, but it felt both sweet and bitter. David's silence at the dinner table and his lowered head as Charlotte and Amelia attacked me still caused pain. I wanted him back in my life, not just his respect, but his presence. Linda placed her cup down, resting her hand on the bench. You seem quiet, she observed, her tone gentle. What concerns you? I looked at my coffee, watching steam rise in the cool air. David, I replied. I earn their respect, Linda, but I am uncertain if I have regained him. My voice sounded rough as the fear I had suppressed began to surface. What if he cannot forgive me for this? She touched my arm, her fingers light but reassuring. Give him time, Robert. He is seeing you now. Truly seeing you. That represents a beginning. Before I could respond, my phone vibrated. A text message from David appeared. Dad, could we speak at the house, please? My heart leaped with hope and anxiety mixing in my chest. I showed Linda the screen, and she smiled. Go, she said. He is prepared. I drove to David's house, traveling through streets that were familiar but weighted with memories. His front door stood open when I arrived, with the living room filled with warm morning light. A photograph of us, me, Catherine, and David as a young boy, sat on the coffee table, its frame polished as though he had been examining it closely. He stood near the window, his shoulders tense, but his eyes met mine with clarity and steadiness. Dad, he said, his voice breaking with emotion, I was unable to see clearly. Charlotte and Amelia fed me falsehoods, and I allowed them to do so. But you, he moved closer, his hands clenched. You were always present, sacrificing everything. I failed to recognize it, I am sorry. Those words struck me like a powerful wave, washing away years of separation. I swallowed hard, feeling my throat tighten. I simply wanted you to understand who I am, David, I said, not seeking apologies, but respect. He nodded, his eyes becoming bright. I do understand. I see you clearly now. He extended his hand, gripping mine with strength and certainty. For the first time in years, I felt connected to my son, not just a shadow of him. We sat together, talking longer than we had in years. He shared details about Charlotte's deceptions and Amelia's desperation, and I listened as the divide between us began to close. When I departed, the photograph on the table seemed more vibrant, as if it contained a new promise. Later, I met Linda at the park again. She handed me a small key, its metal surface cool in my palm. Catherine's former office, she explained. I have been keeping it safe. We could utilize it for a charitable project in her memory. What do you think? I turned the key over in my hand. It represented a different kind of key, unlocking a future I had not dared to envision. I believe it is time to begin anew, I said, my voice firm and resolved. Linda's smile was warm, her presence providing comfort I had not realized I needed. I drove home with the key in my pocket, my thoughts focused on Catherine. The cemetery was not far away, and I felt her calling to me. I felt compelled to visit her and share that everything was resolved, that our family was complete once more. The path extended before me, with the morning appearing bright, and I allowed myself to take a deep breath. The cemetery entrance made a creaking sound as I opened it, with the evening air carrying the gentle fragrance of blooming lilac flowers. Catherine's burial site was positioned beneath an oak tree, its leaves making soft, rustling sounds in the wind. I knelt down, placing a bouquet of her beloved daisies against the headstone, their bright petals creating a contrast against the gray stone surface. The key to her former office felt substantial in my pocket, representing a commitment I had brought to this place. I touched the headstone, feeling the cool granite beneath my fingertips, and allowed the words to flow naturally. I accomplished it, my love, I said, speaking quietly, intended only for her. I demonstrated my worth to them. Charlotte and Amelia are no longer part of our lives. David has returned, and he truly sees me now. My throat became tight with emotion, but I managed to smile. You would feel proud, Catherine. I fought for our family. The sunset created colors of gold and pink across the sky, its illumination softening the harsh edges of everything around me. I sat back, feeling the damp grass beneath me, and permitted the memories to flow freely. The dinner, Charlotte's heartless laughter, Amelia's contemptuous expression, they had considered me worthless, an old item to be discarded. However, I had exposed their falsehoods one piece at a time. The USB device I had delivered to David revealed Charlotte's fraudulent activities. The information leak that exposed Amelia's financial troubles. Linda's assistance, her intelligent mind transforming my strategies into reality. It had been like a war, and I had emerged victorious. Amelia was now an outcast, her reputation reduced to scandalous whispers in the social circles she had once dominated. Charlotte, stripped of her manipulative charm and her engagement, had retreated in defeat, her schemes completely destroyed. I did not celebrate openly, but the sense of justice settled deeply within me, creating a quiet contentment. They had misjudged me, and it had cost them everything. David's apology replayed in my thoughts, along with his hand gripping mine, and his eyes showing clear regret and respect. That moment, more than Amelia's downfall or Charlotte's defeat, represented my genuine victory. My son belonged to me again, no longer lost to their toxic influence. And Linda, her friendship and passionate spirit had provided me with something new, a purpose that extended beyond the conflict. The key in my pocket served as evidence of this, a charitable organization in Catherine's memory, a legacy we would create together. I remained uncertain whether Linda and I would develop beyond friendship, but her presence was sufficient. She represented an unexpected source of light in my life. I stood up, brushing dirt from my knees. We are beginning fresh, I told Catherine, my voice steady and confident. David, Linda, and I will make you proud. The wind moved gently, carrying the scent of daisies, and I sensed her presence, not within the stone, monument, but in the atmosphere, the light and the quiet strength I had maintained throughout this ordeal. I walked toward the entrance, with the cemetery's iron doors appearing ahead of me. They did not represent a barrier, but rather an opening, a doorway to something new. I paused, looking back at her grave, where the daisies glowed in the diminishing light. The battle was finished, but life continued. There was work to be accomplished, plans to make with Linda, relationships to repair with David, and a future to create. I removed the key from my pocket, its metal surface reflecting the sunset's radiance. It felt appropriate, like a piece of Catherine that I would carry into the future. I walked through the gate, where my car waited beyond, its engine producing a gentle humming sound when I started it. The road extended into the twilight, with the horizon bright with possibilities. I drove away, holding the key in my hand, with the world opening before me.